this recession, as deep as it was masking something else that was happening in our society that is a much longer run, much more profound change that will be with us for the rest of our lives. How many people here have heard the term the new normal? Some of you have. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And what I'm going to do is talk about what's driving the new normal and what happened to the old normal and where we are in our thinking, because the world changed in 2008. And part of what's happening right now is that that short-run recession is interacting with these long-run issues in a way that is not only making things confusing, but it's also adding a lot of dynamics to the whole picture. Basically, the concept is that in 2008, we entered what we have been referring to for a long time as the age of entitlements. 30 years ago, we said, well, about 2010. 20 years ago, we said, well, about 2010. 10 years ago, we were a little more specific. We said, well, exactly in 2008. But by 2010, you'll really notice it. We entered the age of entitlements. We've only looked out in terms of revenue and budget forecast only about 25 years now. But basically, we're not seeing any change in the trends. And at the federal level, the GAO and some other economists. Has anybody here ever heard of David Walker? Nobody has ever heard of David Walker, former comptroller of the U.S. Currency, former director of the General Accounting Office, now executive director of the Peterson International Economics Foundation, has a book out called Come Back America. Yeah, you may not want to read this book. He's a little bit more, he uses a little more hyperbole when he talks about this stuff. But there are big changes that have happened, and it started in 2008, and the world changed. The world changed in 2008. And this is not a Minnesota issue. This is not even a national issue. This is really in large part a global issue. And what happened is, in 2008, we had about 30% increase in the number of people turning age 62. Why is 62 significant? 62 for the last 2+ decades has been the average age at which Americans and Minnesotans retire. Before their 63rd birthday, more than half of Americans receive their first Social Security check. You're only eligible at 62. And by the time before you have your 63rd birthday, half of Americans have already received their first Social Security check. That may be changing a bit right now, but it's probably not going to change by huge leaps and bounds. It may change by a year or so. But in 2008, we saw about a 30% increase in the number of people turning age 62. Now, here's a question. When did we know that the people born in 1946 would turn 62 in 2008? Did we do anything to prepare for that? No. Why would we do that? Why would we want to prepare for that day? We were going to be forever young. We were the boom generation. We were the generation of the Beatles. I don't know if you checked or not, lately or not, but the surviving Beatles are looking pretty long too. And how about Mick Jagger? Mick Jagger is no longer a young fellow. Okay? I'm surprised that kids, my young people, my son's age, would still listen to people Mick Jagger. I mean, when I was his age, I would not have listened to somebody from the 20s. You know, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. Well, the world changed in 2008, and this is not a little short blip. The number of people turning age 62 is going to increase dramatically for each year for about a decade and a half. We knew this was coming. But if it were just that we were going to have more old geezers in our society, that would not be the issue. At the very same time, we're going to have more old folks approaching retirement. The number of young people, 18 to 24, is actually beginning to decline in both Minnesota and the United States. It's already declining in all of our neighboring states. The high school graduation class in Minnesota of last spring, a year ago, was the largest that we will see for more than a decade.